Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi and welcome back to That Trippi Show. Today's special episode is something a little different. It's about a movie, Kiss the Future. It's about the Bosnia War, about how quickly and suddenly a nation where people have lived and worked together and share a love of their country can collapse into hate, revenge, violence, and all-out war. How quickly that can happen. How a strong man fans the emotional flames, and how music, art, culture provided a light that brought people together and gave them hope to see that light kept lit for peace. It's a period and a place I know. I was there for some of it. But today I wanted to bring on our special guest, Bill Carter, who wrote the screenplay, and it was based on his book, Fools Rush In. Both a great read, and literally when I watched a preview of I got to see an advanced copy of the movie. It brought back some both haunting memories of my time on the ground in Belgrade during this, and also some memories of that light that we'll talk about from some of the artists and radio stations and others that combine that you'll see in this in the movie. Bill, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. It's an honor to be here.
Alex, where do you want to get started?
Yeah, so first of all, again, this is for the film Kiss the Future. Really, really excited to share this one. In case you're following along and want to see it, there's going to be a special screening on February 21st, so the day after we release this episode. It's going to be at AMC theaters around the country, I think select theaters around the country. That one's going to be fun because there's a message from Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, who are the producers of the film, about why they got involved, which I'm sure we'll get into with Bill here. Also, after those special screenings, there is a theatrical run beginning on February 23rd at AMC's around the United States, and that'll be mostly in larger cities. But if you need help finding it, you can probably always email us and we'll put you in touch with someone. But guys, what I know we were really excited about talking pre-show was, and Joe, you mentioned this in your intro, you have a personal connection to this, Trippi, and I think our audience, for starters, want to hear more about why that makes this film so powerful for us, and then Bill, you can build on that.
Well, I as I said, I was there on the ground for a short period of time in Belgrade. It's hard to explain how in my kind of accidental life I end up in some of these situations. Alex has been with me when we were on the ground in Ukraine and other places, Zimbabwe. But on this one, I found myself with the 3 or 4 other Americans in Tito's Palace, speaking directly, truth to power, to Slobodan Milosevic, and trying to impress upon him, the need to end this thing, which he was moving towards doing. But I'll never forget the one. It's just a eerie period where he turned to me and he said, "Joe, you know what makes you Americans so wrong about things, or what you don't understand?" And I said, "No, what?" And he goes, "In every conflict, you must have a white hat and a black hat. And there are no white hats in our region. None. I wear a black hat. The other leaders wear black hats. Croatia, Bosnia Muslims, everything. They're all black hats." And it just brings back this film brought back both that dark memory, but also being there, listening to a radio station, B92, which was sort of a beacon for people across the region, not just playing music, but also standing up to what was happening. And so this film brought all that straight, streaming right back into me, that period where, again, trying to, and we were successful, I think, in moving things, but not as successful as what Bill's depicted in the screenplay. And so, Bill, I think, I know how I got there, but how did you get started on this thing?
Yeah, you mean the film or my life there?
Your life there and then the film, I guess.
Yeah, my life there started as an accident.
Same as me.
Yeah, like most good things. And what happened is I basically landed in Split, as kind of a last resort of a certain time in my life that I was going through. And I had a friend, one friend, dear friend, Jason Aplon, who was working for the IRC in Split, humanitarian NGO kind of work. And he said, don't come here, man. Don't come here because I know you. Don't do it. And of course, that was all I needed to get on a plane to get there. And I arrived with $200 in my shoe, and I spent the next several weeks trying to get on an NGO to try to get into Bosnia to just do things, to do something. To me, even from afar, it looked wrong. You know, in a very basic terminology, it just looked wrong that the city was surrounded. I had traveled through there as a backpacker. It just, I don't know, something was about it was wrong, and something about my life was kind of upside down. So it matched. And, you know, I lost someone I loved very much, my fiance. So I was in this dark spot, and for whatever reason, thought I should go to another dark spot. But the beautiful thing is, I joined a circus, a humanitarian aid organization, and that circus, we dressed as clowns, and we drove in to Sarajevo, and we had several tons of food and supplies, and we did it over and over and over again. And that's a treacherous journey, by the way. But what happened to me, because after 2 or 3 weeks in Sarajevo, you have to figure out why you're doing this, because you're watching people die, and that's not what you want to do. And so I was trying to figure out if I'm going to stay or go. And then I met some people. I met these 2 sisters, Layla and Selma Pajevich, and they took me to lunch. Lunch meaning spring onions in their house with their parents, because there's no real food. And the laughter and the humor and the storytelling started to make me feel more connected. And then I started to go to these underground discos and these underground clubs. And that was a revelation. That was like, in the middle of this darkness, in the middle of this horrific death trap, people were down underground playing punk music, reggae music, whatever, rock and roll. And I just, to me, as a young person who was 26 at that time, I thought that's like drinking the marrow of life. You know, it's like, this is being alive. You are alive in this spot. And that was what I got very attracted to as a person.
You know, it's interesting because the same, people don't know, I went into Iraq during the war to work on trying to lift up democracy. You know, they after 40 years of dictatorship, they didn't know what a vote was, what a party was. And so I was one of the people who went in to try to bring, and the same thing, like, don't go there. You don't want to come here. And I was actually scared to death because the war was raging. You were there in Sarajevo with all this going on too, right? I mean, it wasn't just, mean, it was very dangerous. Yeah.
I entered in 1993 in the winter. 1993 was arguably the worst, especially the summer. I mean, you know, no, they're HVO, Croatian militia are killing you on the way to Sarajevo. And then they got the Serbs at Alesia who take all your supplies, or 40% of them, and then they shoot you as you're leaving the checkpoint. You know, I mean, no, this is, people were dying everywhere. I mean, you know,
we were sort of there at about the same time. Belgrade was obviously not as dangerous as where you were, but yeah, we overlapped.
Yeah.
You know, 2 things. And then how did the movie come about, and why now for the movie?
Yeah, the movie came,
in your view.
Right. The movie came about, I got a call around, I'd say late March 2021 from Nenad Chichenshine, who's the director. And he was asking me about my book and about the concert that U2 has. And there's very little footage on the concert that's available to the public. And there's a reason for that. And he's from the region, from Croatia, Slovenia, but he lived a lot of his time here in the States, but he went back there probably thinking around 91, 92. But on the periphery, you know, I think he was trying to investigate how what happened there was relevant to what's happening today. And we were 2 months past January 6th, right? So he called me and we started talking, and we started going and creating a treatment and storyline. And which really is my book is kind of a roadmap for that. And he knows Matt Damon and that company and Drew Vinton and those people. And so he went to Matt. Matt said, yeah, I want to do this. And I went to Bono and gave him everything. And those two talked. And when those two talk and decide to do something, you're now in a different stratosphere.
Hell yeah, I'd say.
Things get done in different ways, and there's a lot of people involved to make sure it's quality control. There's a lot of stuff that happens. And but it happened fast in the film world. And then we were off and running. Here's the funny, it's not funny, but one of the weird things is we did all these pre-interviews with people, mostly my Bosnian friends. They're the ones that populate the film. I'm in there, as kind of this connective storytelling, the Bosnians, Cristiano Ampor, Clinton, and then, of course, U2. And when we planned to go to Sarajevo to do our live interviews of the Bosnians, it's suddenly Ukraine. Like right now, it was like right now, we were telling them right now 2 years ago, hey, we're coming over in March. And then Ukraine started. And Ukraine, for us, is over there. But for Bosnia, Ukraine is on their back door. And more importantly, it involves Russia again. And Russia is involved with Serbia. So suddenly they are now triggered in kind of a post-traumatic stress way. And they don't want to do this. And so we pause for a bit and to see how it's, that first 2 months, we didn't know what was happening, right? All of us. So we paused, and then we went in May, and things were shaping in a way that we knew we were okay. Then it worked. The interviews were incredible. Obviously they're in the film. So that's how this film came about. And we had an incredible team of people that were the core of building this story.
So one of the themes I really want to dive into, and I think this kind of will set up a lot of the other things we want to get to today. It's and this is both from Joe's personal experience and what we've seen in different countries. If you look at everything around the world happening right now, if you look at Bosnia, if you look at what's going on with Putin, with Ukraine, and you see all these countries on edge facing a lot of the things in different levels of scale to what happened in Bosnia. You don't see, or maybe we're not as exposed to the level of that cultural spark, the punk music, any of the other art. Why do we think that is?
Yeah, I hear you. But the funny thing, the reason this movie really wanted to be made right now, where I think it's perfectly timed, is that likewise, in Sarajevo, this was all in the dark, right? Like no one really knew about. Cristiana Ampor was there for 4 years, and she didn't know that this scene existed underground. So in many ways, that scene was in the dark. But I would argue that if you go to most of these conflicts that we're speaking about, the Ukraine, wherever you want to go, art and culture, becomes who you are, because all of us have an art. We just don't know it. Right? We're busy with our everyday thing. I got kids, I got carpools and everything. But when you strip down to nothing and everything's gone, your job's gone, house is gone, family's dead, other people in jail, people in prison, blah, 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 blah. You end up becoming, who am I? Who am I? And what do I do well? You might be the guy who is great at entertaining the kids who have to be distracted from the hell around them. You might be the person who's a great cook. You might be the person who knows how to play guitar. You might be the person who knows how to, whatever it is that you do, that becomes the humanity of who you are. And that is really what I think that's happening in Ukraine. I think that's happening. You pick your spot, that's happening. It's the noise that allows us not to find that in us. But when there's nothing left, that's all you got.
Yeah. So, getting there, because, I gave an outline of what I thought the movie was about, but I'd like you in your own words, what is take us through what you think the story this movie tells.
I think that art, it's funny. When our first pitch to the studio, I was talking about how, I'll give you an example. Okay. The concert of U2 is part of it's in this movie, right? Never before seen. And at the end of that concert, which I was there, It was an incredible thing. 50,000 people in a stadium of all ethnic groups, religious backgrounds that had just been fighting are now in this stadium. At the end of the concert, I'm on the field, and we had 4,000 NATO troops there to protect things. And this general of NATO comes up to me. He said, "Are you involved in this?" I said, "Well, you know." He said, "Jesus, we have spent $5 billion trying to get these ethnic groups to sell each other carrots or to play chess with each other. And this band spends their own money and brings all of this here and plays one show and does it all." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "We are in the wrong business." I said, "Yeah, art and culture matter." And I would say that this movie, you did it right, but what we're trying to stress is that art and culture is not a luxury good. It's not something that you go to on the opera when you don't have any, no one can go to the opera except for certain people. Art and culture are in your home, are on your street, is in your kids' minds. And they preserve us, reminding us that we are a singular human kind of organism on this planet. We're all different, we're all interesting, we all can fight about things, but it doesn't mean that we're not somehow connected. And I think art and culture is one of the things that connects us. And the concert was one of those connections that happened that made it huge. What was happening in the war was doing it as well.
Do you remember who the general was?
I don't. I wish I did, because he was so pissed off. And I don't mean he wasn't pissed at you. He was pissed off at like how we do this kind of linear thinking towards solving problems, right? I mean, that's right. That's NATO, and
right.
there's a place for NATO. I'm not trying to pick on NATO, but I'm saying it's kind of like a hammer on top of a nail, right? And art is a sneaky little subversive thing that can get into us and make us realize, damn, I am part of something bigger. I didn't realize. I forgot that,
that's what kind of strikes me about, that meeting I had with Milosevic that I talked about, where, I thought at the time, like, gosh, he understands the way we think a lot more than I'll ever be able to be inside that guy's head. But a lot of these strongmen, maybe Putin, I don't know, definitely Milosevic didn't understand was all the light that got connected by the B92, radio station, all those people listening to that music, regardless of who they were. I mean, just connected the U2 concert, other things that were going on with art and culture that we're still giving people some like this hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel. But I guess it makes sense, because one of the questions I had for you, like, in the 60s, it was out in the open here at home. I mean, yes, there was a disruptive period in the country, but music actually spoke about that disruption and actually sometimes kind of got in front of it in a way like YouTube did on here. And I guess they're doing that. I mean, they have been to Ukraine, and the thing they've done that did in the subway station, I thought was just wonderful. But you're saying more of that is actually happening. It's just, again, underground.
Yeah, and also I would argue, you're right, is that, like Edge says in the film, I'm paraphrasing, but basically he says, when in times of troubles, the strongmen come after artists, intellectuals, always. And there's a reason, because the ideas and the energy that they're creating makes people remember, I don't need this horribleness. I don't need this ugly rancor. I don't need all of this. I can just talk to my neighbor. Why not just go talk to my neighbor? That's a very dangerous thing to strongmen. So they have to kind of strip that. They attack it.
So when they see like a love story and the country's actually maybe interested in it, they want to. It starts to make sense why they want to attack that kind of stuff. They want to knock it all down, I guess.
Okay, let's take your exact example just now, the love story. One of the most famous storylines in the War of Sarajevo was Romeo and Juliet. It was a couple, I believe one of them was a Serb, I can't remember which one, and one was not. One was a Muslim. And they wanted to get out of there. They wanted to go to Belgrade, or they just wanted to live life, right? Just want to get out of this hellhole. And they were killed by Serbian snipers right on the front line on a bridge that's very famous. And I filmed not the shooting, but I went to that front line. I was one of the first people to get that footage. And they sat there for like a month because no one could get them because if they'd be shot. But that storyline just really pissed off the nationalist Serbs because their story, which by the way goes back to your black hat thing, their story was that everybody's the same here and we're just trying to figure it out. We're just happen to be the biggest people on the block and we're going to try to get it under control. That was the line. And the Romeo and Juliet story, remember they were selling that Sarajevo was filled with mujahideen. It was filled with Muslim radicals. I was there for 2 years. I never had one discussion about religion. Like one. The only reason I knew people were Muslim at all in any way was something about coffee. Like coffee, coffee bean, reading the coffee beans and just kind of old Turkish stuff. So things like that, people were married to each other was terrible for that propaganda machine. And the idea that, like the last satellite, we did the satellites, right? That was this thing we did it's in the film, the satellite link-ups between Sarajevo and U2, which I was facilitated. The last one, which kind of ended it, I was always recruiting people, trying to find people. And this one was in my mind, was going to be the one. It was the Muslim girl, a Croatian girl, and a Serbian girl who had been friends since like they were children. And I wanted them to talk about this idea that I wanted them to stand in front of Europe and say, the line you're being sold is not accurate because we're standing right here in front of you. And that was very frustrating. I mean, I'd go through checkpoint of Serbs and they would ask me how the Mujahideen are doing in Syria, but I'm like, dude, there's no one there like that. So I don't know what to tell you. And it was very frustrating. I had friends, I had Roma friends, Jewish friends, Serbian friends, Croatian friends, Muslim friends, that no one talked about this background. So that was very, very frustrating. And Joe, I'll say one more thing about that on that line, the black hat. But I've done talks all over the world. And sometimes really, really soon after that war, I was in London doing a talk. And someone said to me, well, hey man, it's confusing. It's a confusing place. Got a lot of history. There's two things I want to say to that. One, Sarajevo is a place where there's a mosque, a synagogue, an Orthodox church, and Greek Orthodox, all on the same block.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as Ambassador Sachabe says in the movie, you do not get those 4 pillars of religion on the same block unless you are living centuries of coexistence. Doesn't happen, right? The second thing I want to say is when I got people to say to me, it's complicated, the Serbs, this. Okay. Guess what? The guy on the hill is shooting the 4-year-old right over here in the head. So you want to talk about your history and stuff? That's cool. I'm more than happy to have an intellectual conversation with you about the history of the Balkans. But until we get that guy to stop shooting that kid in the head, we can't have that conversation. We have to get that guy to stop shooting that kid in the head. Then we can maybe have this interesting conversation about history and how to move forward.
So, here you got the propaganda machine, going after the artists that are, or anything that pulls people together, holds them together, because it's about, creating that whole everybody's bad, we got to go get them thing. Strong guys screaming, I'll protect you. And, again, like with Navalny, I mean, you're starting to, I mean, some of these things are obvious in all over the, in all kinds of cities. Israel and Gaza is another one.
A little closer to home too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so I guess that's why the film spoke to me and why I think it's so important that as many people see it as possible. Because I wanted to ask you, what can Sarajevo and this film, teach us about today, about multiculturalism, about how, with all the disinfo out there and stuff, is there something people can learn that you think, helps to learn about that conflict and art and culture's impact and what we're seeing today in other places?
Yeah, I'll start by saying we've only shown this to, very small, some big festivals. And I remember coming out of one and people cry at the end of this movie, but not because they're sad or not because they've seen something. They come out of there with tears in their eyes because I asked someone, hey, how do you, what happened? You know, how do you feel? And they said, I feel a part of humanity. I feel like a better human being. I feel like I'm part of humanity. I think that's the feeling you get. And I think that that's what we have to remind ourselves is that there's a lot of people, a lot of energy out there to, you know, disenfranchise and to create political factions and to put us against each other. If we just remind ourselves that we're really just, we're not the same intellectually. We all have different ideas and different religions and different things. That's the beauty of us. But the beauty of us as a country is that we know that and we use it as our power. That is our power. That is our power. When we go abroad, people have always liked America because we're kind of this melting pot and this complicated history, which, by the way, is so complicated, we probably shouldn't be. It's a complicated history, right? With slavery and everything and the Native Americans. It's just a shock that we're still here. But I think it's because we've always found a way to talk with each other and agree to disagree and keep going. That's been our power. And I think sometimes we can forget that. And art and culture are one of these things that remind us a film can be very important, a concert can be very important, a song, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And I think that is one of the great messages of the film.
Guys, I think that's a really good place to end. I do want to remind our viewers about the special screenings coming up on the 21st, and then also the wider release on the 23rd. We'll include that in the show notes. But Bill, anywhere else you want to point our listeners to?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the AMC website to find out where the theater is near them. Put in Kiss the Future. I want to say something about the 21st. Alex mentioned that Matt and Ben talk about it in the pre-recorded session in the 21st about why they wanted to make the film. But at the end of the film, there's like a 40-minute discussion between Vesna Simovic, who's one of the protagonists in the film, myself, Ninad Chichenshain, who's the director, and Adam and Edge from the band. And we're just kind of having this conversation, kind of like we are having right now. Like, why did we do this? What's this mean? What's the point? So it's only showing that one night, the Wednesday, the 21st. And then after that, on the 23rd, it's a 2-week national run. So we'll see how it goes.
But people can go on the 21st, right? I mean, they're still
it's everywhere. I mean, it's not at one place. It's pre-recorded. So we've already recorded our sessions, but it will,
So we'll put the link to the 21st in our show notes, hopefully. And so if you want to go to that special screening, you'll at least have the information, and also the link to the AMC where it's playing. You know, Bill, really the film really brought back both the darkness but the cultural connection, the music and the art that I felt there on the ground. I saw it, but I didn't know you were running around through all that danger and getting it and turning it into something that hopefully millions will see, because I hope it has the same impact on them that it had on me. So thanks, Bill, for coming on, and thanks everyone for listening to That Trippi Show. This podcast will always be free with support from our advertisers and is part of Resolute Square. Check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. And please subscribe to That Trippi Show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. And one more time, you really should make an effort. We'll put it in the show notes, but find this film, tell your friends. I think it's not just a magical kind of rendering of what happened and how art and culture were so important, but I think it really does speak to you about how important that is today for all of us around the world. Thank you, and Bill, thanks again, and we'll see you all next week.
Resolute Square.